Buddhaya. Good evening. Welcome to Buddha Dharma TV. I am Nidasha Kulitwaku from Toronto, Canada. Today we start our program as always with a blessing service performed by our Venerable Buddhist monks. Reciting of the Anathalakkha Sutra led by Venerable Ajahn Achalo. To obtain the desired calmness, please listen to the chanting mindfully and peacefully.
Andamayang Buddhasa Bhagavato Pupapadanamakharang Karomase Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Buddhaṃ Saranam Gacchāmi Dhammāṃ Saranam Gacchāmi Saṅghāṃ Saranam Gacchāmi Dutiyampi Buddhaṃ Saranam Gacchāmi Dutiyampi Dhammāṃ Saranam Gacchāmi Dutiyampi Saṅghāṃ Saranam Gacchāmi Tatiyampi Buddhaṃ Saranam Gacchāmi Tatiyampi Dhammāṃ Saranam Gacchāmi Tatiyampi Saṅghāṃ Saranam Gacchāmi Itipiso Bhagava Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vichacharana Sampanno Sukato Lokavidu Anuttaro Purisa Dhamma Sarati Sattva Deva Manusana Buddho Bhagavati Sawakato Bhagavata Dhammo Sanditiko Akaliko Ehipasiko Opanayiko Pacatam Veditabo Vinyuhiti Supatipanno Bhagavato Sāvaka Saṅgho Pujupatipanno Bhagavato Sāvaka Saṅgho Nyāyapatipanno Bhagavato Sāvaka Saṅgho Samicipatipanno Bhagavato Sāvaka Saṅgho Yatidan Cattari Purisa Yukani Atta Purisa Pukala Esa Bhagavato Sāvaka Saṅgho Ahuneyo Pahuneyo Dakineyo Anjali Karaniyo Anuttarang Punya Ketang Lokasati Yang kinชีวิตตังนิตวาหุรังวาสาเกสุวายังรัตนังปณิตังนโนสมังอาทิตตากเตนะอิดัมปิพุเตรัตนังปณิตังเอเตนะสัจเจนะสุวัติโหตุขยังวิรากังอมตังปณิตังยตาจักาชัตกยมุนิสมาหิโตนะเตนะตัมเมนะสมาธิกินจิตัมปิตัมเมรัตนังปณิตังเอเตนะสัจเจนะสุวัติโหตุยัมบุตตเสโตปริวันนะเยสุจิงสมาธิมานันตริกัญญมาอุสมาธินะเตนะสมโมนะเวชติดัมปิตัมเมรัตนังปณิตังเอเตนะสัจเจนะสุวัติโหตุเยปุกละอัตตสตังปัสสัตตาจัตตาริเอตานิยุกานิโหนติเตตาคิเนยสุขตัสสะสาวกาเอเตสุตินนานิมหาปลานิอิดัมปิสังเกรัตนังปณิตังเอเตนะสัจ เจนะสุวัติโหตุเยสุปยุตตามนัสสะตัลเลนะนิกามิโนโกธรรมสาสนามิเตปาติปัตตังอมตังวิกายลาตามุตานิปุติงปุญจมานะอิรัมปิสังเขรัตนังปณิตังเอเตนะสัจเจนะสุวัติโหตุขีนังปุรานังนวังนาติสัมภวังวิราตจิตายติเกปวัสมิเตกินาปิชาอวิรุลิจันตานิปันติติรายกายังปริโภอิดัมปิสังเขรัตนังปณิตังเอเตนะสัจเจนะสุวัติโหตุกรณียมัตตกุสเลนะยันตังสันตังปะดังอภิสเมชะสาโกอุจุชะสุอุจุชะสุวะโจชะสมุดวานติมานิสันตุสโกชะสุบโรชะอาปะกิจโจชะสัลลหุกโวติสันตินทริโยชะนิปโกชะอัปปะกาโปกุเลสุอนันุกิโตนัจจคุตังสมาจเรกินจิเยนะวิญญูปะเรอุปวะเทยุงสุขิโนวาเกมิโนหนตุสาเบสัตตาภวันตุสุขิตาตาเยเกจิปานะพุตตาติทัสสาวาทาวราวะอนาวเสสาติกาวาเยมหันทาวามาชิมาราสกะอนุกตุลาติตาวาเยชะติตาเยจตุเรวสันติอวิทุเรปุตาวาสัมภเวสีวาสาเบสัตาภวันตุสุขิตาตานัปโรปรังนิคุเบตนาติมันเยตกัตตจินังกินจิปยาโรสนาปฏิกัสสัญญานัญญมัญญาสตุกมิเชยมัตตายตานิยังพุตังอายุสาเอกพุตตมนุราเกเอวัมปิสาปพุเตสุมาณสัมภาวะเยอปริมาณังเมตัญชะสัพพโลกัสมิงมานะสัมภาวะเยอปริมาณังอุตตังอโดจติริยัญชะสัมปาดังภเวรังอสปาตังทิตัญชรังนิสินโนวาสยานโนวายาวตาสวิกตมิโตเอตังสติงอติเตยพระมะเมตังวิหารังอิตมาปุติตินจะอนุปกัมมศีลวาตัสสเนนะสัมปานโนกาเมสุวินัยเกตัมนัยจาตุกาปเสยังปุณเรติติทานะปารมีสัมปันโนทานะอุปปารมีสัมปันโนทานะปรมัตถปารมีสัมปันโนเมตตาไมตรีกรุณามุทิตาอุเบกขาบารมีสัมปันโนอิติปิโสภะคะวาศีลบารมีสัมปันโนศีลอุปปารมีสัมปันโนศีลปรมัตถปารมีสัมปันโนเมตตาไมตรีกรุณามุทิตาอุเบกขาบารมีสัมปันโนอิติปิโสภะคะวาเนคขมะบารมีสัมปันโนเนคขมะอุปปารมีสัมปันโนเนคขมะปรมัตถปารมีสัมปันโนเมตตาไมตรีกรุณามุทิตาอุเบกขาบารมีสัมปันโนอิติปิโสภะคะวาปัญญาบารมีสัมปันโนปัญญาอุปปาร ญญาปรมัตถบารมีสัมปันโนเมตตาไมตรีกรุณามุทิตาอุเบกขาบารมีสัมปันโนอิติปิโสภะคะวาวิริยะบารมีสัมปันโนวิริยะอุปบารมีสัมปันโนวิริยะปรมัตถบารมีสัมปันโนเมตตาไมตรีกรุณามุทิตาอุเบกขาบารมีสัมปันโนอิติปิโสภะคะวาขันธิบารมีสัมปันโนขันธิอุปบารมีสัมปันโนขันธิปรมัตถบารมีสัมปันโนเมตตาไมตรีกรุณามุทิตาอุเบกขาบารมีสัมปันโนอิติปิโสภะคะวาสัจจะบารมีสัมปันโนสัจจะอุปบารมีสัมปันโนสัจจะปรมัตถบารมีสัมปันโนเมตตาไมตรีกรุณามุทิตาอุเบกขาบารมีสัมปันโนอิติปิโสภะคะวาอริธานาบารมีสัมปันโนอริธานาอุปบารมีสัมปันโนอริธานาปรมัตถบารมีสัมปันโนเมตตาไมตรีกรุณามุทิตาอุเบกขาบารมีสัมปันโนอิติปิโสภะคะวาเมตตาบารมีสัมปันโนเมตตาอุปบารมีสัมปันโนเมตตาปรมัตถบารมีสัมปันโนเมตตาไมตรีกรุณามุทิตาอุเบกขาบารมีสัมปันโนอิติปิโสภะคะวาอุเบกขาบารมีสัมปันโนอุเบกขาอุปบารมีสัมปันโนอุเบกขาปรมัตถบารมีสัมปันโนเมตตาไมตรีกรุณามุทิตาอุเบกขาบารมีสัมปันโนอิติปิโสภะคะวาดัสสะบารมีสัมปันโนดัสสะอุปบารมีสัมปันโนดัสสะปรมัตถบารมีสัมปันโนเมตตาไมตรีกรุณามุทิตาอุเบกขาบารมีสัมปันโนอิติปิโสภะคะวาอวิชชาปัจจยสังขาราสังขารปัจจยวิญญาณังวิญญาณปัจจยนามรูปังนามรูปปัจจยสลายตนังสลายตนะปัจจยปัสโสปัสสะปัจจยเวทนาเวทนาปัจจยตัณหาตัณหาปัจจยอุปาทานอุปาทานปัจจยภวภวปัจจยชาติชาติปัจจยจรามรณะโสกปริเทวทุกขโทมนัสสุปายาสัสสัมภวันติเอวเมตตาสเกวลาสทุกขกันตาสสมุทัยโหติอวิชชายตเววะอเสสวิรากนิโรธาสังขารนิโรธสังขารนิโรธวิญญาณนิโรธวิญญาณนิโรธนามรูปนิโรธนามรูปนิโรธสลายตนะนิโรธสลายตนะนิโรธปัสสะนิโรธปัสสะนิโรธเวทนานิโรธเวทนานิโรธตัณหานิโรธตัณหานิโรธอุปาทานนิโรธอุปาทานนิโรธภวนิโรธภวนิโรธชาตินิโรธชาตินิโรธจรามรณะโสก ปริเดวดุกโดมนัสสุปายาสันนิรุจจันติเอวเมตตาสเกวลาสดุกขันตาสนิโรโธโหตินะโมรัตนตรัยยะนะโมอริยเจ้านะสักการะเบโรจานะบุรัสยะตถาคเตยะอรหัเตสัมยักสัมพุทธายะนะโมสาวะตถาคเตเยอรหัเตเยสัมยักสัมพุทธเยนะโมอริยภาวะโลกิเตโชรายะบุริสโตยะมหาสโตยะมหาการุณิกายะเตยะตาโอมดาราดาราดิริดิริดุรุดุรุอิทิวะเทสะเลสะเลปัสสะเลปัสสะเลกุสุมากุสุเมวาเรอิลิมิลิสิทธิโสละหัปปนาเยโสหานะโมรัตนตรัยยะนะโมอริยเจ้านะสักการะเบโรจานะบุรัสยะตถาคเตยะอรหัเตสัมยักสัมพุทธายะนะโมสาวะตถาคเตเยอรหัเตเยสัมยักสัมพุทธเยนะโมอริยภาวะโลกิเตโชรายะบุริสโตยะมหาสโตยะมหาการุณิกายะเตยะตาโอมดาราดาราดิริดิริดุรุดุรุอิทิวะเทสะเลสะเลปัสสะเลปัสสะเลกุสุมากุสุเมวาเรอิลิมิลิสิทธิโสละหัปปนาเยโสหานะโมรัตนตรัยยะนะโมอริยเจ้านะสักการะเบโรจานะบุรัสยะตถาคเตยะอรหัเตสัมยักสัมพุทธายะนะโมสาวะตถาคเตเยอรหัเตเยสัมยักสัมพุทธเยนะโมอริยภาวะโลกิเตโชรายะบุริสโตยะมหาสโตยะมหาการุณิกายะเตยะตาโอมดาราดาราดิดิริดุรุดุรุอิทิวะเทสะเลสะเลปัสสะเลปัสสะเลกุสุมากุสุเมวาเรอิลิมิลิสิทธิโสละหัปปนาเยโสหา
Now, let us focus our attention on our Venerable Ajahn Chelo as he delivers insightful sermon on mindfulness of breathing. Please welcome Ajahn Chelo of Australia to deliver another sermon on the topic of bright and glad as foundation for insight.
This morning I'd like to read through the Anapanasati Sutta, the Sutta on mindfulness of breathing, and give some practical, practice-based commentary about it as well. The context of where this sutta was taught is very inspiring. Lord Buddha taught this sutta in Savatthi, and I think the rainy season had finished and he decided to stay on longer. I think if I remember correctly, Lord Buddha spent, I was at 18 rainy season retreats in Savatthi, but I think 24 in that area, because there was another big monastery that Visakha sponsored. There was also places for the nuns. But the Lord Buddha said a very interesting statement. He said, I am pleased with the progress that is occurring in the Sangha. And so you can imagine, it's a nice thing to imagine Mahamoggallana's there, Sariputta's there, Ananda's there, Anuruddha's there, many of the great disciples spending the rainy season in the same place with the royal support, of course, of the King Pasenadi, the support of Anathapindika and Visakha. It was like headquarters, and this is when it was really pumping as a kind of a arahant producing corporation. The CEO was there, and the president was there, and the chief executive officers were there, and it was all working like a very nicely lubricated machine. Of course, there was a lot had gone into that we don't see. All of the past lives, all of the vows, all of the practice under previous Buddhas, previous Sanghas. But it's a wonderful statement when Lord Buddha says, I am pleased with this progress, because people were literally attaining stream entry, Sakadagami, Anagami, Arahantship, literally left, right and centre. How nice it must have been if you were a simple villager in Savatthi and the monks and nuns came on arms round. This one's an Arahant, this one's an Anagami, this one's And if you had a doubt, can you imagine if you had a doubt about your practice? Go and ask Sariputta or ask Mahamoggallana. So, you want to know where grandma was reborn, go and ask the Buddha. And, it really was like that for those people who had the merit to be born in that situation. So, the sutta that Lord Buddha taught about breath meditation is the part that I think is most useful for us, where we're at, is the first, in the sutra, it's first two paragraphs. In the chanting book, it's one page. And after this introduction, the rest, I think it's important that we understand that the Anapanasati Sutta is describing what is possible with breath meditation in terms of a process. It isn't an instruction about one sets, because, by the end of the 3 pages, the mind is purified and liberated. So obviously, for some of the people in that day and age, some of the people listening to the sutra as the Buddha taught it probably did liberate their minds from stream entry or sakadagami. They probably finished their work. But it's a description of how the breath can be used as a vehicle for liberation. And it gives us some very clear hints as to, and I think most importantly, or very importantly, is it's a huge affirmation about the power of this practice and the correctness of it. So let's have a look what Lord Buddha said. It's very pithy, literally just a few lines, but pay attention and hear the message. Bhikkhus, when mindfulness of breathing is developed and cultivated, it is of great fruit and great benefit. When mindfulness of breathing is developed and cultivated, it fulfills the 4 foundations of mindfulness. When the 4 foundations of mindfulness are developed and cultivated, they fulfill the 7 factors of enlightenment. When the 7 factors of awakening are developed and cultivated, they fulfill true knowledge and deliverance. Okay? So it starts with an in and an out breath and it ends with enlightenment. We need to pay attention. A lot of, I think, one of the things I love about the Theravada, I love all the Buddhist traditions, and people do have different proclivities, different character types, different traditions serve practitioners in different ways. But I think the real strength of the Theravada is the simplicity. The challenge that Theravadan practitioners have is keeping it simple. And I think the biggest challenge we have is keeping on doing it consistently, having faith in it, and being patient. It's a real challenge for modern people to be diligent and while patiently waiting for the grand results. When we're diligent, we want quick results, modern people. So to be diligent and consistent and be a little bit patient when the grandest results don't occur quickly, that's our challenge. And then I think a lot of people look to this and look to that and do more study and try more methods, where actually We actually probably need to just keep plodding with the one that we have, but unrelentingly. So, ana is an in-breath, pana is an out-breath, sati is mindfulness, anapanasati. How does it fulfill the four foundations of mindfulness? So, and firstly, it's really wonderful that it can, that this one practice can fulfill, support the awareness that we have in being mindful in these four kind of fields of reference. So, mindfulness of a body. You come to sit your breath meditation, you bow and you sit in a meditation posture. The body is there. And when you establish your awareness on breath meditation, you are mindful of feelings associated with body contact, the breath coming in and out of the body. So often people use breath meditation in conjunction with reflective practices as well. So I often teach this. We can do the hair of the head, hair of the body, nails, teeth and skin practice. We can use the breath while doing that, breathing in, kesa, breathing out, kesa. And one is using that breath to keep a center, using that breath to keep a sense of presence of mind while you contemplate that earth element on the top of your head as hair is just hair, not self. Loma, breathing in, loma, breathing out, hair on the other parts of the body. Naka, breathing in, naka, breathing out, nails, teeth and skin. So when the part of the novice ordination, the preceptor gives every single novice this gamatana as part of the ceremony. This is your first meditation object, as one gone forth, is to see the body as parts and to see those parts as elements. Why? Because it helps reduce vanity, helps reduce attachment to it, lowers delusion and ignorance. So we can use the breath to be aware of the body as a body. And the breath is like an anchor, keeps us centered, keeps us present. When it comes to the Vedananusati, obviously the breath itself has feelings. And you'll notice when you're on intensive meditation retreat that sometimes the sensitivity and awareness of the breath is quite refined. You'll notice that the breath coming in at the nostrils is cooler than the breath coming out. And different people are aware of the breath at different areas. Although there's no lungs down here in the abdomen, when you breathe in there's some movement in the abdomen. When you breathe, so it's like we're noticing the feelings associated with the breath. And I often teach for the first few minutes to be aware in the nose area, the chest area and the abdomen area, the abdomen, the chest and the nose. You just kind of give the mind a broader field at first, and then after a few minutes you observe the breath in that one place where you can watch it most consistently, most easily. And then we try to be aware of the beginning, the middle, the end of each in-breath, the space in between the beginning, the middle and the end of the out-breath, another space. And this is Vedananusati, this is awareness of feelings. Of course what happens is we have all sorts of mind states in this area as well. Any of the hindrances, they will all have their feeling correlation. If you have sensual craving, there's feelings in this area, kind of hot. If you have aversion, there's feelings in this area. Similarly with sloth, by now, we're on day 8, full day 8. You all know what it's like, the heaviness, the dullness, what that feels like. So we're trying to do breath meditation, but we're aware of feelings as well. And a practice that can bring great results is to observe them while you're aware of the breath, you observe your feelings arising, staying for some time, changing and ceasing. And that can be any type of feeling, so that's the breath itself, any of those feelings associated with mind states, the pain when it starts to impinge, shoulders, knee, lower back, and but when people do pain practice, for example, some people decide they're going to sit with more pain, and probably more common among monks, Kamatana bhikkhus, and although everybody in intensive meditation retreats has to do some of it, but when people do this pain practice, the breath is what makes it possible to try to keep a calm center, and kind of establish the mindfulness, generate the mindfulness, make the mindfulness strong enough that this quality of presence of mind and clarity and awareness is able to observe feelings with some stability, some aloofness, some detachment. And for people who are skilled, the more pain there is, the more space they can get from it, the more sharper their samadhi, but that's an advanced practice. But we all do some of this practice. And so when you come to do breath meditation, there's going to be feelings there, and you are aware of feelings as well as feelings of the breath and feelings that arise in the whole area. Then the cittanupassana, the mind states, the thoughts, the proliferations. You're trying to be aware of the breath, but I'm thinking about this. Note it, come back to the breath. But in a process over a period of weeks, months, years, decades, you learn a lot about your mind states by trying to practice breath meditation, because the quality of clarity, the quality of presence of mind just helps you to see thoughts more clearly, and it helps you to see the energies underneath them. And there's some important lists that it's good to refer to. The 5 hindrances is always central, always helpful. When we know that something's a hindrance and we can label it as a hindrance, it can help us not be lost in it. Let's get some, Lord Buddha describes them as bandits, robbers, stealers of peacefulness. When we know that list well, and it's not a hard one, but sometimes delusion, we get deluded by them. We say, oh, I'm lost in irritation and aversion, or I'm lost in a deluded fantasy, or just call it, oh, okay, that's the 4th hindrance, the restlessness, agitation, etc. You just name it for what it is in terms of a hindrance, and you come back to the breath, starting again. And so you learn a lot about mind states. And one of the things I constantly say is just know if it's neutral, wholesome or unwholesome. Just have this basic awareness of being truthful. What is affecting your mind? Is it skillful? Is it unskillful? Or is it just nothing, nonsense? That is your cittanupassana. But also, as the stages of peacefulness arise, if you get 5 minutes of peacefulness, it's also cittanupassana. There's that in your mind that just knows the mind is peaceful now. If your peacefulness deepens, what Lompo Anan refers to as upajjhara samadhi, 10, 15, 20 minutes of peacefulness with only a few thoughts, mostly wholesome thoughts. Okay, you know the mind is experiencing that kind of collectedness. Very interesting about breath meditation is many people have the experience, particularly when they do intensive practice, that it appears that the breath stops, and if the mind becomes truly peaceful. And what is actually happening is that the mind is turning inwards, away from the 5 coarse sense bases, or the eyes, ears, nose, tongue and body, and the mind sense base is experiencing samadhi. The mind is turning away from the external sense bases, and it appears that the breath stops. That's how it's experienced. And it doesn't. It's just that peacefulness becomes the object, and we train ourselves to stay with that peacefulness, allow the mind to be peaceful. And what I normally encourage people to do is just to stay centered in the area, wherever you were last aware of the breath, you stay centered in that area. And just stay still and quiet and centered. And then at some point the mind will come out of the peace by itself, and you'll be aware of an in-breath, and you'll be aware of an out-breath, and you continue with your meditation of the in-breath. And so in this way, breath meditation leads the mind into states of samadhi. And it's really wonderful what you can learn by the quality of the breath and how it helps you to understand the mind state that you're experiencing. Because if you are agitated, the breath will be agitated. If your mind is genuinely peaceful, your mind will be refined and peaceful. If your mind's a bit peaceful and you think, oh, this is a peaceful meditation, but you notice it's quite heavy breathing, it's more likely sleepiness. It's more likely bhavanga. What Lumpur Tate referred to as tree stump samadhi. Nothing good grows from it, although he did say it's better than thinking a lot. So if it's real peacefulness, the breath gets finer and finer. And then the peace is the object, the breath appears to disappear. And so The Kammatthana Ajahns, the great practitioners, recommend that when the mind comes out of that peacefulness, if we are able to experience it, that is a good time to do focused contemplation, for example, of the body as parts, or as those parts as elements, because the mind has more power at that time and the hindrances are significantly suppressed. It's a very likely time to have an insight, vipassana jnana. So we use the breath as well as giving the mind the stability for the deeper investigations into the body and the mind. And so dhammas, knowing dhammas as dhammas, what I refer to as, I think when we know something's wholesome, you know something's neutral, you know something's unwholesome, it's kind of knowing that's dhamma, wholesome, kusala dhamma, akusala dhamma. And when, we can pick up a theme of investigation, death reflection, metta bhavana, these are dhammas, right? It's like picking up a dhamma to cultivate. Excuse me. Seeing things, cultivating your anicca sanya, particularly noticing the cessation. This is something we can do with the breath meditation as a foundation. Just notice with our particular habitual mind states that cause us a lot of misery. With breath meditation as a foundation, notice when they're present, notice when they cease, and also really notice when they're not there. Okay, that one isn't there now. We will learn in doing that kind of practice of just the bare awareness with the sampajanya, the clear knowing. Okay, there's very frequently irritation and aversion, but right now the mind is content. Okay, irritation and aversion has arisen. Notice, give the interest to the breath, notice how long it lasts for. It ceases. It's like, and notice cessation. When we use the breath in this way, it's like the calm in the storm, the eye in the storm, and we have a place to rest, we have a place from which to observe the various things that impinge on consciousness, and we can do all sorts of wonderful practices with the breath as the foundation. And I think even with breath meditation itself, if a person's faculties are sharp enough, the insights into cessation with each in-breath and with each out-breath can lead to deep insight, probably liberating insight. You have examples in the suttas of bhikkhuni throwing some water over the ground, and as the water seeped into the dirt, she became enlightened. Just because she saw that there was water, it flowed for a period of time, it sunk into the thing, the water was gone. She became an arahant with that. So anything where there's a clear anicca sanya, as long as the faculties are strong enough, then we can have insight. With regards to 7 factors of enlightenment, mindfulness is the first one. So with the anapanasati, we're using the breath as a object to develop consistency in mindfulness. That's the wonderful thing about the breath, is that you're not going to have too long where there isn't one. If you're going to be noticing your meditation object. You've got an in-breath, you've got a space, you've got an out-breath. If you really take it as like your walking stick on your journey, you've got something to lean on. It's there. If it isn't there, if it appears not to be there, the mind's probably peaceful or asleep. But if the breath takes the mind into peace, that's wholesome, don't worry about it, very good thing. But we use it as the thing that sharpens our mindfulness, because mindfulness gets stronger with consistency. I've said several times, these days, 28, 29 years into my practice, if I wake up in the morning, I'm generally aware of the first in-breath. When I go to the bathroom, I'm aware of the feelings at the bottom of my feet. This is what happens, is if we, as Lord Buddha says, mindfulness is to be cultivated, made much of. If we do practice consistently and diligently over a period of years and decades, it becomes somewhat automatic. We have to keep facilitating that process, but it's not difficult to be aware of the body's, you know what you're doing with your body. You can, if I'm not talking, oftentimes if I'm listening to someone else, I'm aware of my in-breath and I'm aware of my out-breath. It's just like, that's how I've trained myself to stay centered. And everybody can get these results. if we practice breath meditation in the morning, in the afternoon, and the evening, that will be the result. Excuse me, I have to suck a lozenge for a few seconds before I start coughing. The second of the 7 factors of enlightenment is investigation into Dhamma. So I know we've been talking a bit about that already. So you're practicing awareness of breath, but you're also noticing what hindrances are present. Another list I like to refer to is the 16 upakilesa. We should become familiar with that list. What is a negative quality? What is a quality that darkens the mind that should not be trusted? What are the 5 spiritual powers? We become familiar with this is utterly wholesome, this is not to be trusted. And so there's a mindfulness and clear comprehension, a bit of investigation when necessary, when it would be helpful. You just know what's affecting the mind while you're giving the interest to the breath. Is it helpful, is it useful, or is it not helpful? If it's not helpful, drop it. The consistency of the breath meditation with some samadhi is what makes it possible to be able to let go of mind states. Why? Because the mind is holding that instead. It's like when you pick up awareness of breath as your object, you can drop the other objects. If mindfulness isn't yet really good, mindfulness of breathing we haven't trained a lot in it, it's a bit of a tug-of-war. It's like sometimes it's with the delusion, sometimes it's with the hindrance, sometimes it's with the breath. But when we train and we get more skilled at it, we really can pick up the breath meditation and put down the other mind objects. As I was saying earlier, you can use breath meditation as a foundation for body contemplation. You can use breath meditation as a foundation for observing arising and ceasing. You can use breath meditation to give you some coolness as you contemplate dukkha, the pain, the dukkha aspect of where it hurts, the clinging, the where is the clinging. Do some investigation and what does it feel like? What does the attachment feel like? What does the clinging feel like? What does craving for and craving not for feel like? And have a look at the dukkha of that. And breath meditation gives us the space, gives us the ability, gives us the mind some integrity from which it can contemplate it. It's a pretty scary contemplation, actually. All conditions are unsatisfactory. All conditions are bound up with suffering. But when we have some coolness and some stability, and as Ajahn Sumedho says, that which knows suffering isn't suffering. So the mind that can rest with the breath and rest in awareness and contemplate this, it has a refuge. The refuge of Dhamma, the refuge of one's own Dhamma practice. So the next, in the 7 factors of enlightenment, mindfulness, contemplation of Dhamma, virya, energy. So we have to apply energy to the practice, and then what happens also is that the practice also energizes us. It energizes the mind. When you're not allowing the mind to flow out into the outflows, the bhava asava, the kama asava, the sensuality and the becoming, the ignorance, you're not feeding the ignorance, you're feeding clarity. Then energy arises, the energy that's normally scattered in our grasping at thoughts about the past, thoughts about the future, thoughts about other people. When we restrain that, the natural energy of the mind, it's a wonderful thing actually. Most people have no idea just how much energy there is in a well-trained mind, how much potential, what the incredible potential of a human body and mind is. And energy arises when we are consistent in our mindfulness of breathing. And then when there is good energy, some collectedness, the next factors of enlightenment arise, the piti, Bojjhango Sati Sankato Dhammanang, which are virya, piti, pasati, rapture and tranquility. So rapture can be a feeling of joy, lightness, brightness. Some people have tears streaming down their eyes, and sometimes people are so happy that they cry. So that's a form of rapture. It's so much joy you can't contain it. And sometimes, if I recollect the qualities of the Buddha, the sacrifice of the Bodhisattva, the wonderfulness of the Dhamma, the merit that the Bodhisattva accumulated to establish the sasana, and all of the benefit that I've received, how much less I suffer compared to how I used to, then I can get teary-eyed with gratitude and love for the Buddha, and future Buddhas also. And that's Buddhanusati or Devanusati, various ways that we can give rise to piti, mental pleasure. The Pasadi, Ajahn describes the rapture as being like the waves on top of the ocean, and he says that in practice we should try not to get kind of too fascinated or too stuck. We should aim to go deeper, dive down deeper into tranquility, and in Thai they call that sangop yen, just a peaceful, cool, calm steadiness. But rapture can be, it's often a signpost, it's a way to incline the mind towards that. But so we can do our anusatis, we can do your Buddhanusati. Excuse me. When the cold air comes in, it goes down my throat, it makes me cough. Do you mind to close the door, please? Yeah. Human situation, it's always something, isn't it? Thank you. That's just that one, I think, was the problem. So, rapture is like the waves, and some people get their hair standing on end. And then other experiences of rapture can be like the body floating. The body can feel like it's floating. The body can feel, the way we experience the body, it can feel like firm and steady like a mountain. That's a form of rapture. And the mind can feel as big as the sky. That's a form of rapture. And all of these things are good. They're good signs. They're wholesome. They're factors of enlightenment. And so breath meditation gives rise to these things when we do it consistently. But we keep giving the interest, the thing that's giving rise to those rapture is the consistency of the mindfulness with the breath. So we maintain the mindfulness with the breath, and then the rapture should go into a more steady, stable, cool, and the breath should get finer and finer. And then that's probably approaching more the real samadhi and upekkha, the last of the 7 factors of enlightenment. So when the breath becomes very refined, when there's hardly any thoughts, that's your upacara samadhi. When there's no thoughts and the mind is very peaceful, breath meditation led to a peaceful state, that's samadhi, appana samadhi. When you come out of your appana samadhi, that's when the mind will have a lot more equanimity. And equanimity in its pure form is the 4th jhana. It's a very not well understood quality. It's not indifference, it's not detachment, it's steadiness and equilibrium based in having samadhi and mindfulness, clear comprehension and wisdom. So it's very profound. And Lord Buddha says equanimity is the quality closest to nibbana, and nibbana being a wonderful, unshakable state of peace. But we have to also work to cultivate equanimity, so we don't just get 4th jhana one day. We have to practice trying to be equanimous. So when we do breath meditation, we get a lot of experience at that, trying to not let the mind fall into sensuality, craving for, craving not for, trying to pacify irritation when it has arisen, or lust and craving when it has arisen. We bring the mind to more equilibrium, and we use the breath to do that. As I've said many times, just keep inclining the mindfulness to know the feeling of the breath. Put down the other mind objects, and There's some equanimity in Kanika Samadhi, because the mind's not being swayed when it's a little bit peaceful. There's more equanimity in Upajjhara Samadhi, there's a lot of equanimity in Appana Samadhi, and there's pure equanimity in the fourth of the jhanas. So, breath meditation gives rise to, helps us to cultivate these 7 factors of enlightenment. When the 7 factors of enlightenment are fully developed and cultivated, they fulfill true knowledge and deliverance. So in this process, what occurs? We begin to have smaller insights, the vipassana jnana. That will mean the mind will see very, very clearly anicca or dukkha or anatta. Probably most common is the anicca. It's the easier one to see, the arising and the ceasing, the arising and ceasing. One day in the course of practicing our breath meditation, when mindfulness is sharp and there's some stability, the mind will just really see anicca much more clearly. Sense of self will disappear, and Tanajanananda explains that when you see one, you see the other 2 immediately afterwards, and there's a letting go and there's an experience of emptiness. Awareness that knows the nature of emptiness, not emptiness of what? Emptiness of a self, emptiness of permanence. So, when we get those results and we keep practicing, normally samadhi develops a bit more. You get more insight, you get more samadhi. And when there's more insight, there's less grasping, there's less delusion. When there's less grasping and less delusion, the mind collects more easily. The mind collects more easily, and then we apply the mind to reflect with wisdom, the insights get deeper. At some point the practitioner will experience a Sotapatti Magga. We have this chant that we do, the 8 kinds of noble beings, the 4 pairs. So for people with more ordinary level of parami, the path of insight has 8 stages. People get a glimpse of Nibbana, they have the stream entry path. As their practice deepens, they have the same insight, but it's stabilized, they get stream entry fruit. That's the first of the 2 pairs. First of the 4 pairs, first pair of the 4. Then you've got Sakadagami path, Sakadagami fruit, Anagami path, Anagami fruit, Arahant path, Arahant fruit. And you can read Ajahn-Anand's book, Samadhi for Liberation. I think that book Buddho, and in some of those talks, he doesn't say it too directly because he doesn't want to be criticized, but it's kind of clear that he's explaining. If someone mentions this to you, it's kind of clear that he's explaining when he was abandoning certain fetters and when the mind was experiencing higher levels of liberation. For the people in the time of the Buddha, many of them, as I've said, had practiced under previous Buddhas. Many of them had vows that they wanted to be enlightened in the time of a Buddha. So when you get these people listening to one sermon and becoming arahants, they probably were established already, and they were just finishing off. And or they went through those very fast because their spiritual powers were very well developed. So breath meditation will help you develop your samadhi, help you develop your insight, be a good base from which to do your reflective meditations and your contemplations of Vedana and Dhammas and all sorts of wonderful things. But I will go through and read the remaining part, and just as I said earlier, this is more like a process. It's not really an instruction. You can't read the Anapanasati Sutta and decide to enter jhana and then decide to liberate your mind and be an arahant by the end of the sutta, unless you were in Savatthi listening to Lord Buddha, in which case you wouldn't be here now. But here we are. And how bhikkhus is mindfulness of breathing developed and cultivated so that it is of great fruit and great benefit. Here, bhikkhus, a bhikkhu gone to the forest, to the foot of a tree, or to an empty hut, sits down having crossed his legs, sets his body erect, having established mindfulness in front of him. So what does that mean, establishing modesty in front of him? I think my interpretation of this is like one makes mindfulness the fore. It doesn't mean you put your mindfulness in front of you. It means you establish mindfulness. Ever mindful, he breathes in, mindful, he breathes out. Breathing in long, he knows I breathe in long. Breathing out long, he knows I breathe out long. Breathing in short, he knows I breathe in short. Breathing out short, he knows I breathe out short. So this doesn't mean that we have to make a mental note of how long and how short each breath was. That's not how I understand this. The way I understand it is that you know the quality of each breath as it arises. So if it's short, you know, you're with the breath with your mindfulness as long as that duration is. So you don't have to say, oh, that was a long one, oh, that was a short one, that was a medium one. It's not a kind of a sense of self-commenting on everything. That doesn't liberate anybody. The way I understand this is we know the breath as it is, according to its characteristic, according to how it's felt and experienced in that moment, moment by moment. You know each breath as it is. He trains us, I shall breathe in, experiencing the whole body. He trains us, I shall breathe out, experiencing the whole body. Different people explain this, interpret this differently. That some people interpret it as the whole body of breath, beginning, middle and end. The whole body of breath, beginning, middle and out of an out breath. He understands the whole body of breath, or the whole. Other people explain it as when the hindrances are, when the mind is somewhat pacified and cool, one can have awareness that is aware of the whole space of the body, but the center of the awareness is on the breath. So it's like there's different ways to understand it. He trains us, I shall breathe in, tranquilizing the bodily formations. He trains us, I shall breathe out, tranquilizing the bodily formations. So, you know, we all come, there might be some tension in the shoulders, there might be some, tiredness or busyness, restlessness. So you use your breath to calm. Just know, I often say it when I do the guided meditations. It's like breathing in deeply, waking up, breathing out the sleepiness, relaxing, consciously relaxing. Do you use the breath to relax the body? Sit not too straight, not too relaxed. You just use the breath to calm down and relax a bit. And I think, when someone's really skilled at breath meditation, there is a kind of you can actually flow kind of breath energy through the body and calm things down in a more subtle way as well. He trains this, I shall breathe in experiencing rapture. He trains us, I shall breathe out experiencing rapture. So that's what happens when we are mindful of the breath. Each in-breath and each out-breath. There isn't much wandering. Then rapture arises. He trains us, I shall breathe in experiencing pleasure. He trains us, I shall breathe out experiencing pleasure. So that's the mental pleasure. Sometimes it's a piti sukha, is the phrase they use in Thai. Rapture and pleasure, pleasant rapture. So it's just a pleasant mental feeling, a pleasant abiding. When one's mindful of the breath and really with the breath, it's very pleasant. He trains us, I shall breathe in experiencing the mental formations. He trains us, I shall breathe out experiencing the mental formations. He trains us, I shall breathe in tranquilizing the mental formations. He trains us, I shall breathe out tranquilizing the mental formations. So what does that mean? The way I understand it, you come to do your breath meditation and you are mindful of whatever thoughts are going on. And you kind of breathe through them. And then you use the breath to turn away from, if it's unskillful. And just keep establishing the awareness on the breathing, and then the thought formations settle down by themselves. You don't feed them. So with breath meditation, you tranquilize the thought formation, the mental formations. He trains us, I shall breathe in experience the mind. He trains us, I shall breathe out experiencing the mind. So as I was saying earlier, when the breath brings the mind inward, settles, collects, and the mind gets not interested in the eyes, ears, nose, tongue and body anymore, and then it's interested in I don't know how other people experience it, but for myself, when my mind begins to become peaceful, the experience of the breath at the heart is more like a sphere that expands and contracts. It's in the beginning it's a nose, chest, abdomen, abdomen, chest, nose. As the breath gets a bit more subtle and a bit more peaceful, it's more of a expansion and contraction in that one area. And it's more of a mental feeling than a bodily-based feeling. If the breath gets finer and the mind becomes very peaceful, that's experiencing the mind. At least that's how I understand it, a peaceful mind. Not affected by the hindrances. He trains us, I shall breathe in, gladdening the mind. He trains us, I shall breathe out, gladdening the mind. He trains thus, I shall breathe in, concentrating the mind. He trains thus, I shall breathe out, concentrating the mind. So, similar, making the mind joyful, relaxed, at ease, collected. Then the next sentence, he trains thus, I shall breathe in, liberating the mind. He trains thus, I shall breathe out, liberating the mind. That could be liberating it from the 5 hindrances, because sometimes the attainment of samadhi is referred to that way. The mind is released for a period of time from the darkening qualities of the hindrances. He trains thus, I shall breathe in, contemplating impermanence. He trains thus, I shall breathe out, contemplating impermanence. He trains thus, I shall breathe in, contemplating the fading away of passions. He trains thus, I shall breathe out, contemplating the fading away of passions. He trains thus, I shall breathe in, contemplating cessation. He trains thus, I shall breathe out, contemplating cessation. He trains thus, I shall breathe in, contemplating relinquishment. He trains thus, I shall breathe out, contemplating relinquishment, because that is how mindfulness of breathing is developed and cultivated. So, as I was saying, for us, I think it's best understood as a process. He trains thus, I shall breathe out, contemplating the fading away of passions. That's a process. You know, that's like the more you do it for years and decades, you'll see that your passions have, and you're keeping your ethical precepts, your passions have faded. In the final stages, from when the person gets the deeper insight from Sotapanna to Sakatagami, from stream enterer to once returner, greed and hatred is significantly removed from the mind. So that really is a fading of passions. And then at the stage of anagami, greed and hatred is uprooted from the mind. So, and you know, if you're using breath meditation as your foundation, you're going to notice that. You're going to, oh, it's gone now. Oh, it's much less. Oh, it's gone. It's wonderful, it's marvelous. No more passion. So, he breathes thus, I shall breathe. He trains thus, I shall breathe out, contemplating cessation. He trains thus, I shall breathe out, contemplating relinquishment. Relinquishment of what? Relinquishment of self-view, relinquishment of greed, relinquishment of hatred, relinquishment of believing in rites and rituals that will liberate you, relinquishment of your doubts, because once you attain to an unshakable insight, you don't have doubt anymore. This is how breath meditation is cultivated, developed and cultivated, so that it is of great fruit and benefit, and thus was it said. So, and I'm sure at the end of that sutta there were many more arahants in the world, even though there were already many listening. So, and it is nice to review that image, and that when you do your Sangha-nusati, your Buddha-nusati, just think of Lord Buddha in the environs of Savatthi, teaching people, and huge. I've seen similar things. Obviously the quality of the bhikkhus was not as good as in those days, but I have seen the Dalai Lama addressing 15,000 bhikkhus, for example. And if all of those people practice well, you know, they will become better quality, and it'll be a Buddha that they'll be listening to. But yes, just thinking of all of the wonderful lay people. Ajahn Anan frequently says, I'm not sure what his source is, but I trust it anyway. But he says by the end of the Buddha's life, 75% of the lay people in Rajgir were stream enterers. And it makes sense to me. It's like, not everybody has the particular, in Thai they call it vasana. Not everybody's going to be a bhikkhu or a bhikkhuni. The different people have different karmic tendencies, habits. They may have obligations, and but it makes sense, doesn't it? You've got the Veluvana, where the 1,250 arahants spontaneously gathered. Lord Buddha taught the Awada Patimokkha, and I think on the first meeting of the Buddha, when King Bimbisara brought in his kind of chieftains, I can't remember exactly the number, but I think 80% of them became stream enterers at the first discussion with Lord Buddha. So you've got the village headmen, you've got the king, and you've got arahants in every little forest grove everywhere you look. So if someone did have some spiritual inclinations, they'd go and discuss their practice with these people, and they're getting very clear and direct must be nice kind of falling to sleep knowing that there's 1,000 arahants spreading metta to you from every direction. That'd be pretty nice too. And I think that kind of thing, that synergy, when you have that many noble beings in the environment, that's going to help pacify your hindrances and help you to grow. But the people who had that merit, obviously, they've paid respects to well-practiced noble beings in the past. And so everything that you people do, visiting Lumpur Nun, visiting myself, practicing, paying respects, doing our pujas, we're all building on that foundation. We're all increasing the likelihood to keep meeting the teachings and the Buddha, the Dharma and the Sangha. So, I've talked for a while. I want to encourage you to have faith in breath meditation. Be confident in it, and be confident that it led millions of beings to their liberation. It helped millions of beings be mindful of the 4 foundations of mindfulness. It helped millions of beings cultivate the 7 factors of enlightenment, and in doing so, their minds were purified and liberated. And that means us too. If we keep to the program, stick to the program, be consistent, be diligent, your factors of enlightenment will grow. You will be delivered. I wish you every success.
Let us take a short break to enjoy a beautiful song called Ancient Path, a deeply meaningful and spiritual inspiring hymn titled O Suffering World. There I'll find the ancient wisdom, and there I'll find true love and peace and rest. And this breath that I sing to all who seek the way, where the sage has freedom glory, and there I'll be with him and glory be. And this prayer that I sing to all who seek the way, to walk with joy, to walk with faith on the eightfold way. To walk with joy, to walk with faith on the eightfold way.
And I wanted to speak today about Samma Sankappa, right thought, or attuned thought. It's the second fold of the Eightfold Path. And I'm going to be, as part of that, I'm going to be drawing on teachings from this book, The First Free Women. And this is like, I like to call it a radical translation of the Therigatha, The Therigatha are the verses of the elder nuns of the Buddha's time, the awakened nuns. And this is a very unusual rendition, interpretation. It's difficult to find the right words. It's not a literal translation, but the the person who translated it is a good friend, became a good friend actually through the working on the book, and is proficient in Pali, and has like a 20 years of meditation practice, and went back to the original texts and sort of digested them and brought them out in a very different way to just a literal translation. So, so some people will say, oh, this isn't good, this isn't a proper translation, and others will go, wow, this is really accessible. So I was one of the wow people when I first read the manuscript of this book, and I helped get it into the format it is now, into a published, accessible book. Because I felt when I first read the manuscript, I felt like these are beautiful teachings that really go straight to the heart, and I'd like them to be available to people. So it's already since February on its 4th reprint. So it's obviously is speaking to people, which is wonderful. And I want to draw on a few poems. So each of the poems in this book are, and in the Therigatha, there are 73 poems, and they are each like the voice of a bhikkhuni, one of the awakened bhikkhunis of the Buddha's time. So I'm going to start with the poem of Tissa, the third. And I don't know, it's a succinct little poem, but it just fits. Why stay here in your little dungeon? If you really want to be free, make every thought a thought of freedom. Break your chains, tear down the walls, then walk the world a free woman. Why stay here in your little dungeon? If you really want to be free, make every thought a thought of freedom. Break your chains, tear down the walls, then walk the world a free person, woman, man, being. So this is such a beautiful, simple teaching on how we can get, how we can get stuck in the dungeons of our minds. And I think now, I'm not sure if the UK is in lockdown at this time, but they're, going in and out of lockdown, and it can maybe even feel like a dungeon. You're stuck at home, you can't go anywhere, you can't see people, and stuck there with your own mind, with the old habits, there's old thoughts, there's old memories, and it can start to get a bit dungeon-like. You start to find lurking corners that you haven't gone to before for a long time, and feel a little trapped. So Tissa is pointing to how, we can get stuck in those little dungeons of our mind, and if we can turn our thoughts around to make every thought a thought of freedom. It's kind of a radical statement. Make every thought a thought of freedom. Then we start to literally, break down the walls of our mind, break the chains of our old conditioning. And then we can, as we do that work, we start to feel more free. And it's, in this poem, it's her enlightenment poem. So it's like breaking the chains, breaking down the walls. It's opening it right up, and it may not feel like that immediately. It might feel like a little bit less bound, a little bit more free, a little bit more comfortable, a little bit less pulled by our old habits of mind. But then little by little, if we keep working at it, it does, radical shifts can happen. So in the Noble Eightfold Path, the first fold of the path is right understanding or right intention, right understanding. And then the second fold of the path is right thought. And there's many different translations, for those words, Samma Sankappa. I actually like right thought and or attuned thought. So Samma, one of the translations of Samma can be attuned, just as you tune an instrument, or you could say attuned to the Dhamma. So we get to, so that the practice is to turn our attention back to the thoughts and get to know them and start to turn them around. And I realized I was actually meant to start with a meditation. I just dived straight into the teaching. I think I did that last time. So so that's, anyway, that's the kind of framework of the topic, I guess. And yeah, I guess I'm enthusiastic to talk about it. So let's settle down and we can go into some silent meditation. So finding a posture, getting a seat and a posture that's comfortable enough. Where you can have a straight spine as best as you can, not forcing, but also, you know, energized, but not tight, not too much energy, not too loose. So you find that place of balance. Take a few deep breaths, breathing in and then letting go. Just being aware of your body sitting here, letting yourself fully arrive here, fully be present here. Being aware of the body breathing, just touching into that present reality, present experience. So the thoughts of freedom that Tissa referred to are thoughts of letting go, thoughts of kindness, benevolence, and thoughts of compassion, care. So maybe as you sit, all thoughts just drop away. Then you don't need to worry about bringing up any thoughts. But just in case, as you're sitting here, a thought or two or three or four might be going through your mind. Just be aware of what kind of a thought, you know, are these thoughts of doubt or judgment or criticism or fear, or, you know, just be aware of what is the mood of the mind and what are the kind of thoughts that are being entertained. Often they're happening without us noticing until we sit and quieten the mind and get more still. So if you find that the mind is busy or restless or confused or concerned, or upset. Just invite a letting go, a sense of care. We're just sitting for these few minutes. It's not hours. And so whatever is occupying the mind can be let go of right now. Let it go. Just bringing awareness to your breath, the body breathing. Letting go. So what a blessing that we have some that the Buddha has passed down these teachings and also the practice. I know for myself, when I first started to meditate, it was such, in a way, quite a shock to see what my mind was doing, to actually kind of turn back the attention back to this own mind and see, like, oh my goodness, full of criticism and judgment and desire and confusion, and then there would be these moments of where it would all just drop away, just for little glimpses in the meditation where it just drop away and there was just peace. And that was for me like it was like most delicious. It's like, oh, this is possible. We don't have to be tyrannized by our minds. And so first of all, I was seeking that through meditation, and then as we deepen the practice, you realize, like, well, meditation is part of it, and how we're living is part of it. How I'm actually relating to the situations that arise, and the people who I'm with, and the environment I'm in. It's how I actually relate to that is a huge part of the path. And the meditation is also a huge part. The meditation is like a deeply transformative part of the path. And then there's the sort of more of the nitty-gritty of how we're living in the world. And it can take some time to even see sometimes what our mind is doing, because we're in it. We're in that. We've done it for years. It's what we grew up in, and it's what we've been doing. And the tendencies and the habits of the mind can just be so normal to us that we don't even notice that we're operating from a place of criticism. For example, I know people who are more perfectionist oriented. I'm not so much that way myself, but those who have that perfectionist streak, that it can be really inspiring and beautiful to see. And then, but there's an edge, where it goes too far, and then it's just this kind of relentless expectation for what is imperfect to become perfect. So everything is perfectly imperfect. It's all in a state of flux. Things are changing all the time. And nothing, that this idea of perfection is, the way we think of perfection is not real. This idea of things coming to a perfect, the perfect relationship, the perfect meditation, the perfect life, it's perfection is being present with change, is knowing the constant changing nature of things. That's perfection. It's not in fixing something in a certain way. So if you have that leaning of wanting things to be a certain way and trying to keep them that way, you might notice that in doing that, dukkha arises. It gets stressful because you can't sustain it. It's not sustainable. So we might enjoy a little moment of perfection here and there, and things exactly the way we think they should be here and there, and then it changes. So the perfection is being okay with that changing nature of things, to be interested in it, to be present with it, and letting go. So the critical mind wants to kind of get everything lined up and the way it should be, and life generally doesn't comply too well with that way of doing things. Or you may be very, like a greed type. I'm sort of a little bit more that way myself. Always wanting something nice, something different, something new, something beautiful, something delightful, wanting everyone to be friends and everything to be easy, let's make it nice. And then for the greed type, it's like it's an endless search. You're always wanting more. It's never quite enough. It's never long enough. It's never good enough. It's never, or it's good, but you want another one, or the next thing, and that's the nature of greed, always looking for something else, something better, something more. And so the thought of freedom to bring to a greedy mind is thoughts of letting go. Thoughts of renunciation, and sometimes it's translated that way. It sounds a little severe, renunciation, but thoughts of letting go. So when the mind is filled with wanting, just to bring in the thought, what if I were to just let go? What if I were to just let go of that wanting and be present and curious and interested in how things are right now? Instead, turn towards things as they are instead of always wanting something more. And if you are a greed type, you might notice, that even when you get what you want, the greed sort of blurs the mind. So you get what you want, and then you're not quite there when it's happening because the mind is still in that mode of more. So then it's over, and then it's like, oh, hang on a minute, I missed it. It can be like that. So getting to know the mind, getting to know the nature of your mind, and really well, not being embarrassed like, oh, I wish I shouldn't really be greedy because I'm a Buddhist. Greed arises in the unenlightened mind. Aversion arises in the unenlightened mind. Confusion arises in the unenlightened mind. That's how it is. It's not personal, actually. It's just those qualities, poisons, tendencies, whatever you want to call them, will come in until we've freed the mind completely, as Tissa is pointing to. There is the possibility to free the mind, but we have to understand the trap that we create for ourselves through habitual thinking, through particular ways of thinking that we've been conditioned in. So some of the conditioning is what we came in with, our tendencies, and some of it is the environment we've grown up in or that we're in now that shapes it. So we have to kind of get to know our mind and not be afraid to see what we might not want to see. So it's really important not to take it all too personally and not to be too upset about any of it. It's like all kinds of stuff can go on in the mind. And then we just need to know it and guide it in the right direction. So if you're a greed type, it's thoughts of letting go. And if you're an ill will type, always seeing what's wrong and criticizing and judging, and then the thought of freedom is thoughts of kindness, metta, thoughts of benevolence. So that's like a softening and accepting, kindness, befriending things as they are instead of always wanting them to be otherwise. And basically things are as they are. Things are as they are, and then we want it like this or we don't want it like that, and so we create complexity. We make it more complicated than it needs to be. Things are as they are, and then we can what we do have agency over. We can't make the world right. We can't we can't even change somebody we care about to be the way we think they should be, even if it's like trying to guide them in the right direction. We can't always, you can lay out the conditions for that to happen, but you can't make it happen. So we can't control the world to be the way we think it should be, but we can guide and understand our own minds. So controlling the mind isn't the way either. Sometimes we do need to sort of take the reins and pull it in a different direction if it's going off the rails. If we're going off the rails, but often it's just about listening and understanding. We need to understand our mind more. We need to understand where is this coming from? What's underneath this wanting and not wanting? And then there's confusion also. Confusion, you need to develop clarity. The third thought, like unhelpful thought, is the thoughts of harm, thoughts of harmfulness, wishing harm on others. And this can come about when we're afraid, or when we feel we really want to get our way and we're not getting our way. Often fear is underneath thoughts of harm. It can be fear. It could also be a kind of greed. It can also be like wanting to dominate, wanting to have control. I think it's not so often a strong quality in the people who turn up at meditation teachings, but it's definitely out there in the world. The wish to dominate and control and have things one's own way, and then when that isn't happening, then we want to crush, harm, get rid of. So just noticing, or it can be that we have harmful thoughts towards ourselves. We haven't accepted ourselves as we are. We don't. There's not enough love there for this imperfect being that we live with every day. So getting to know, if you have those thoughts, harmful thoughts, wishing harm on oneself, on yourself, or on others, really be aware that it's in itself is harmful. It's going to harm you, and if you're not careful, it can harm others. So you don't want to go that route. That's the route to endless suffering. So getting to know those thoughts if they arise in you, and finding a way of restraining a restraint, so you're not going to do any harm, and then transforming those thoughts. Care, listening, understanding, expanding your view to accommodate a broader picture. So we need to use our discernment to see what's actually going on here, and then also to see, well, what's the skillful response to this? And I think the precepts are also very, very important. The 5 precepts, very important support for the practice, and they stop us from doing harm. So that they're also very, very important. They stop us from doing harm to ourselves through, ourselves and others. Lying and abstaining from lying, abstaining from killing, abstaining from sexual misconduct, abstaining from stealing, abstaining from getting drunk, stoned, getting inebriated where we don't really know what we're doing. So then we're taking care of this being. And it can take a while, not everybody, maybe not everyone on the call is living by those yet. It took me a while to align with them from my life before, but it really is a supportive framework for the practice, and it stops us from hurting ourselves and hurting others. It's kind of a noble and uplifting practice to keep the precepts. So so there are many ways that we can use thought in a careless way, and then from thought comes speech and action, and then we start finding ourselves doing things and saying things that we regret, and and that as part of the training, that's what happens. First of all, we want to get clear, like what do we want to do? Do I want to cultivate the path? Do I want to cultivate right thought? Do I want to change the way, the habits of this being, change the course, the direction of this life to a direction that leads to freedom? And if the answer is yes, then then we start training and we start paying attention to the way that our thoughts are going, and bringing understanding. So I notice there are certain things that I'll fall into again and again, and it might be that it's things are going well and everything's okay, and then suddenly boom, fall into this. It's like a pit, it's like, and there'll be this pit, and it's very, very believable. It's like there'll be stories of so I get my stories of something along the lines, it's a line, it's something along the lines of, the world would be a better place if you weren't in it. So that's my little line. That's my Mara that comes up. The world would be a better place if you weren't in it. And it's amazing how believable it can be when it comes up. So as I said, I want to laugh because it's kind of like, I know that that's complete rubbish. But when it comes up, it's like, oh, that's true. And then I can start to see all these put together, all these little stories that make that real. And then or even like, oh, a Lokavahara would be much better if I wasn't here. I should just move on. These little things. And then they can be very believable for a little while, not for too long. And then I start to reflect, then so there can be the stories. If you just go with the old patterning, it's very early patterning. It's something that was conditioned, and I know the story, so it's kind of, it's in the spotlight. So it's like Mara is seen. You could say I can see the conditioning. But then there'll be, when there isn't proper full awareness, they'll be dropping into that, and then the stories that support that thought. And then at some point, there's like, hang on a minute, is this really true? Is that real? And then in investigating it, it's like there's no substance to that. No, it's not real. And it might take a little while, but one can pull apart those stories, and you might have a line that is your line. That some people have the "I'm not good enough." Well, a lot of people have actually, and that might be for different reasons. It might be like, I'm not smart, I'm not intelligent enough, or I'm not strong enough, or I'm, whatever it might be. There's all sorts of things that we think that we put together that tell us that we're not enough. But the thing is, we're here like this. We have manifested like this right now. So how can it be wrong? It is like this. And this morning we were just reflecting on how this body and mind is part of nature, and we take it very, very personally. And this is one of the things the Buddha is pointing us to. Like, when we take this process of body mind personally, there is suffering. Suffering arises because it's not really personal. It's a process that we have some agency over. We can guide it, but our body is doing its thing. I can't tell it what to do. It's doing its thing. I can move it around a bit and do, feed it the right things and exercise and breathe good air and that kind of stuff. But basically, it's an incredible complex process of nature doing what it's doing. And then the mind also has the nature of the mind is to think and to get busy with thoughts. That is the nature of the mind. But what we can do is we can guide the thoughts in a direction that leads to freedom and away from more and more suffering. And so it's said that when the Buddha was, in those days leading up to his enlightenment, he recognized that his thoughts could go into two directions. Those thoughts of desire, thoughts of ill will, and thoughts of harm. And then there are thoughts of letting go, thoughts of kindness, and thoughts of care, compassion. And that they would sort of go in this direction or that direction. And then that one had a choice. If there's a tension, there's a choice in which way we let our thoughts go. So I think it's often underestimated, the power of thought, how deeply that influences our life. The way we let our thoughts take over, and the way we get pushed around by our thoughts. And I've noticed, living as a nun, I meet many people, and many good people. And when I say good people, I don't mean like absolutely perfect, who never do anything wrong. In fact, I don't think I've ever met anyone like that. But good people with goodness in their hearts. And often those people are saying to me, oh, I'm so bad because of this, or I can't do it because of that. And often people fall into those places where things are not well. There's the sense of not well in oneself. And so we can do something about that, each of us. We can't change another person's mind. We can help guide people, but we can change our own mind. So whether it's greed and creating stories of more, or whether it's a strong idea of who and what we are, or whether it's whether our thoughts are thoughts of criticism and putting down ourselves or others. If once we know that, we can change those thoughts. We can do something about it. And part of it is in daily life, and part of it is in our meditation practice. So in meditation, we can develop the qualities of letting go. We can develop the qualities of metta, beautiful quality. We can develop the quality of compassion. You know, these are qualities we can develop not just in the thoughts, but also in the heart and in the mind as a mood, as an energy. And even the best people, the kindest people, the most generous people I've known drop into those places. So, you know, you have to take care. I just want to read this beautiful poem. It's Mitta. This poem has been coming to me like a mantra, actually. We've been having some retreat time here. And I'd find this poem coming up like a mantra, just going through my mind. And it's Mitta, friend. Full of trust, you left home and soon learned to walk the path, making yourself a friend to everyone and making everyone a friend. When the whole world is your friend, fear will find no place to call home. And when you make the mind your friend, you'll know what trust really means. Listen, I have followed this path of friendship to its end, and I can say with absolute certainty, it will lead you home. So I love that. I love the whole poem actually, but I love that line: when you make the mind your friend, you'll know what trust really means. So when I first read this poem, I felt like, oh, it's far from my life. You know, I didn't feel like my first leaving home. You know, like from as a teenager, it wasn't full of trust, and I didn't make the world my friend, and everybody wasn't my friend. I was kind of, you know, wasn't like that, and so I felt like, oh, I can't really relate to that poem. But then as time went by, I started to reflect on it more. It started to come to me actually like a mantra. And there was a second leaving home when I ordained. And that really was full of trust, leaving home, going forth, full of trust. And it was making a friend to everyone. And gradually making a friend to my own mind. And you know, that's it. When we make the mind our friend, there's a place to rest. It doesn't matter what's going on. It doesn't matter what thoughts are arising. Actually, if we've really got to know our mind the way it is, the tendencies it has, and we've guided it as best we can in the right direction. So there are some things that we can change. There are some things that will change through cultivation, and there are some things that may just keep popping up. And that's what I've come to accept, you know, with this mind, that there are some things that will just keep popping up because the conditioning is so old and so part of this personality. And you know, think about the Buddha, you know, who's the, you know, fully enlightened Buddha, which is so far from what any of us are. We're just like little, you know, just the very, very beginnings, learning. That the Buddha, Mara still came to the Buddha throughout his life and would try to, you know, whisper in his ear to pull him off track. And the Buddha would still, you know, even like right before he died, would have to say, I know you, Mara. So that's our work too. We have to learn to say, I know you, Mara. I know that thought that's not, I know that thought that that's not me, it's not mine, it doesn't belong here, it's not real. And then if we can do that, we can relax, we can trust, we can feel safe where we are. And the safety isn't because we've living, you know, in a barricaded house where nothing can get in. It's because we're occupying this space with clarity and awareness and kindness. So when those unwelcome thoughts arise, those intrusive thoughts arise, we know them. And even if they take over for a little while, sooner or later we recognize it, and then we patiently, kindly escort them out and replace them with care, with kindness, with letting go. So it's a practice. And it's a beautiful practice, and it's sometimes a little scary because we do have to meet the whole gamut that's in there. And so, developing this quality of awareness and developing our meditation practice, and particularly developing awareness and kindness, metta, is very, very important. And having that framework of support of the sila, of ethics, these are really, really important, and they will support us. And as Metta says, I have followed this path of friendship to its end. So she's an awakened one. And I can say with absolute certainty, it will lead you home. So home is that place of safety, that place of rest, place of freedom. So I just want to offer that today, and then I'd like to open up the Zoom for any sharing or any questions that anyone might have. Okay.
Thank you very much, Ayananda Bodhi, for the beautiful meditation and reflection. So I just wanted to remind people, in case anyone joined a little bit late, that these questions will be recorded, but we won't record your face or your video. It'll be just your voice. If you're not comfortable with that, then please feel free to drop your question in the chat box. There's a little button at the bottom of your screen. If you hover your icon there, you can click on the chat and pop it in the chat box, and I will read that out for Venerable Ananda Bodhi. Okay. If you do want to ask the question yourself, then the best way for us to find you is to go to the participants button, and in there you'll get some kind of, I always get this wrong. There's something that says raise hand, I think, and then you get a little hand that comes up on the screen, and we'll be able to find you and unmute you, and we'll mention your name. I think Anne-Marie has kindly offered to organize that, so she will announce when it's your turn to ask the question. Okay. Or it doesn't have to be a question, it can be anything that you'd like to share.
While we're waiting for questions, I'd love to offer a short reflection, because I found that such a helpful talk, Aya and Ananda Bodhi. Really, it was just amazing, because I'm often judging myself because some of these unhelpful thoughts come up, and I feel like I should have mastered that by now. So to hear you with your experience share that still happens for yourself as well, I just found that really comforting, and just really, really helpful to know it. I almost felt myself relax a little bit, taking the effort away. So I just wanted to say thank you very much. I found it a really wise and helpful talk.
Thank you. That's lovely. Thank you, Mel. I'm really happy to hear that. Yeah, it's it's being human. So it looks like Nilanthi has a question.
Hello. I have this little question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. And when I meditate, when my breath is settled down and I don't feel my breath, and I feel my body vibration. After that, I can see pictures and sounds I can hear. But some point, some time is like, I don't feel anything. Is that time is like missing. I don't know what happened, but I'm pretty sure I didn't sleep. It's happened sometimes every day, but I don't know how long it is. But I don't know, it's some minutes or some seconds or something. It's like, is that normal or?
Yeah, it's just the mind is the mind is letting go. The mind's letting go, and it's you're abiding in a peaceful state. It sounds like this is skillful. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Very much. It's like really inspired your talk, and it's like really, really. Thank you very much. So, do I need to do something when it's happened? Because all the time, when after that loss period, it start feeling breath again. Yeah, it's like a wake up kind of thing. So,
it might be, different people may give you different answers. So I'm going to say, and I'd like to invite Ayachanda also to weigh in. But what in the way that I've been trained, in the way I practice, it would be to know, just to know. So to know when the mind has gone into that place of really like deep letting go, and to know if that is the case, or whether one has just kind of zoned out or gone to sleep. They're different. They're very different. There's a very different clarity. And then to know that it changes, and see, is there any attachment? Is there any greed? Is there any is it okay to let that go and move on to the next thing? To be more with the changing nature, to be more aware of the change. So that's the way my training has been, is to know the state that is present and cultivate what is wholesome and keep letting go.
I would go with that. I don't know that I have a lot more to offer. I don't think it's the time to start doing, because it sounds as though you've got to that peaceful state by a lot of letting go. So sometimes, because we're unfamiliar with that territory, we feel like, oh, where am I? Who am I? And it's very natural for this sense of the doer to want to come back in. But actually, you've managed to arrive at that peaceful state through letting go. So if the breath is coming back naturally after some time, that suggests to me that, yeah, you're just in slightly unfamiliar territory, but after a while, your mindfulness will kind of brighten up, and you'll be able to see more going on in that place. And the only other thing I would say is that you'll probably know the difference between whether it was a sleep state or just a peaceful state by how you feel after the meditation. So if you feel quite groggy and, like you need to have a strong coffee, then maybe you did kind of fall asleep and lost your awareness. But if you feel quite peaceful and fresh and maybe even energized, then it's probably a state of letting go. So I think it's just a matter of getting familiar, and like I said, just remaining aware of whatever's happening.
The next question is from Daisy.
Hi, there was one more question in the chat, so I didn't want to override this one, but I wanted to first thank you very much for a very inspiring and very unlocking session, for unlocking a lot of new things and more serene thoughts. And I wanted to ask you if you have any particular advice on the letting go, which for me is one of the things that I am working on. So are there any particular phrases or mantras, or I wouldn't call it even techniques, in terms of how to let go, or when we see, or when I see this arising, that you have found particularly helpful to then use in those cases in order to facilitate letting go?
Yeah, there's a few. I mean, it really depends on what's going on. If it's something really intense, very strong, then let go. And sometimes I used to use the phrase "release the grip." Release the grip, and then that would make me see, like, where is the holding? Release the grip, and then it was like, oh yeah, where's the holding there? Why is there's like the mind is like a fist. Release the grip, and then that just to invite that gradual opening. And if it's something more subtle, then, or even if it's bodily, sometimes it'll be like a bodily feeling that's tension. this morning, actually, we had a meeting in the morning, and then I had quite a lot to do, and I knew I was going to be here online, and I had this very strong sense of pressure. It's like urgency, pressure. And then we start with a little check-in how we are. And so I was like, well, I'm feeling all this pressure. And so I'm going to invite that energy to ground, to come down. So sometimes it's just knowing the movement of the energy or of the mind, and then countering that. So then as I invited that energy to not be pushing this way, but to come down into the ground, down through the body into the ground, the letting go happened naturally. And there was a coming into centeredness. And then some things need to be investigated before we can let them go. So some things will come up again and again. And that can be because it's a habit of mind. And so you can explore, the Buddha does encourage us to explore. It's not just like do this or do that. Dhamma Vicaya investigation is one of the awakening factors. So we can, if something comes up and you recognize, oh, it's that thing again, oh, it's that thing again, you can see whether you can just replace it with another intention, or whether you can let go with the breath. With the out breath. Out breath is lovely for letting go. And then if it keeps coming up, what I've found is sometimes things keep coming up because they want to be understood. So then to turn towards them and get interested and see whether you can see. It's like I experience it like a listening. So it's not like that so much, although some people might do it that way. It's more like a relationship and listening, and like a taking interest in, like, oh, what do you want to tell me? Okay, well, I'm listening now. What do you want to tell me? And then just staying with it until whatever it is wants to be heard is heard. Or sometimes it might just be a word or even an image or a memory. And then sometimes once it's just become aware, conscious, it lets go on its own. So it's an interesting practice because we can't control all of this stuff. It's not like we can get it all under control. And there are some things that we can transform through. Through bringing in different thoughts, different intentions. And there are some things that we just need to listen to and get interested in and understand, and then that letting go happens.
And in terms of the desire, greed, and
desire,
wanting, especially desire of things and people, then it's probably also listening and getting interested into why that arises, I would assume. Or
that can be part of it. So there can be emotional reasons why there's attachment in that way. There's desire. There can be like a need, an unmet need that one's seeking for, and it can also just be plain old desire. Somebody's attractive and you have desire for them. And I mean, in the Buddhist, in the monastic form, it's because we're celibate. We have these practices of asubha, like getting to know the unbeautiful aspect. So you look at like what is it that's attractive? Well, such like the hair and the skin and the way the person moves, and then you look at like, okay, hair. It's like even just reflect on your own hair. If you don't wash your hair for 2 weeks, is it attractive, or is it kind of smell like a sheep and look a bit greasy? And skin. Oh, it's such beautiful skin, and it's like, well, skin, it's like flaking off all the time, and it'll get all wrinkly and blotchy as we get older, and again, if we don't wash it, it's going to smell bad very quick. So it's like looking at the other side of things. So it's not to be repulsed, but it's to see the whole picture, and also contemplation of death. I found that very helpful, is just recognizing we're all going to die, and what the things that I want, I'm going to have to be parted from. I remember one of the nuns I lived with in the UK, she, I was always, because I'm a greed type, so I was always trying to kind of give things up and renounce. It was always like a real battle, in the early years, really struggling with this and struggling with that. And then she said, all those things you work so hard to let go of, you're going to have to be parted from anyway. You're going to have to let them go anyway. And it was like, oh, yeah. The idea of them being mine in the first place is the problem. They never were. They're never going to be. So you know, the Buddha with desire, he encouraged us to know the gratification, so that he, you know, acknowledges, yes, there's gratification when pleasant things are gratifying. The danger is that they change. They can't be gratifying for very long. And the escape is letting go. So it's using wisdom and reflection and discernment, and knowing, like, what do I want to follow and what do I not want to follow. And then there's the wholesome desire, chanda, the desire of the zeal, you know, the desire for awakening, the desire for liberation, the desire to cultivate wholesome states, the desire for you know, developing the path, the desire to be generous, the desire to, you know, offer something of benefit to the world. These are wholesome desires. They lead to greater freedom. But desire for, you know, nice things is an endless process.
Aya, if it's okay for you, we'll go to a question from the chat box now, so I can read that out for you. So, have you any advice on my ill will? When I get upset at someone, my mind can get quickly offended and my heart hardens, and I look at the person in an unkind way. Please help, as I really don't like my anger and I know how harmful it can be.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's a lot of good material there. So first of all, there's a lot of awareness. So you can see, you're describing the process really clearly, so you can really see what's going on. That's awesome as a beginning. And there's a wish to transform it. So it's like awesome. You know, it's much harder when we're justifying, we're blaming, we're right and they're all wrong. You know, when we're in that state, then we can't even get started. So you're already a good ways down the road in the right direction. And then and the way you described actually that your heart hardens, there's a lot of clarity there. That's very, very good to know it, and that it's dukkha. You know, you don't want that. It's unpleasant. So, you know, I think wise reflection is an important part of all of this practice. And so, with wise reflection, we see things don't go the way I want. People aren't the way I think they should be. They're not relating the way I think they should be relating. So it's like when we start to see those, you know, it's like, so I think it should be this way, that it isn't. And that's a cause of dukkha. So it can be that, just as simple as that. Sometimes it's as simple as that we let go of our idea that it should be a certain way. And then there's, you know, using also discernment to protect oneself. So if you don't want to be with people, you don't want to spend a lot of time with people who are, you know, harmful, bullying, degrading. You know, you don't want to be, you want to protect yourself to not have to be exposed too much to people who are going to bring up unwholesome states like that. But if so you know, if the person is bringing out a lot of unwholesome stuff, manifesting a lot of unwholesome stuff themselves, be careful, you know. And if it's somebody you work with, then, you know, work with them and then have your boundaries. And then there's the boundaries, I think, is a very, very important part of it, that you're not going to just let yourself be overwhelmed by all that stuff. And then and the precepts again, you know, you're not going to do anything harmful. So it sounds like that's not really in the picture for you, which is great. And then it's like coming back and working with your own heart and mind. So if you're able to have to develop boundaries, then it's easier to work with what arises in the heart. And when your boundaries are poor, then it's hard because you're so affected by everything. And so you're sort of trying to control it all out there, when really you need to sort of say, okay, you know, only this far, and then you take care of what's here. So that hardening of the heart. The problem with, you know, when our heart hardens is that we the whole of our being kind of hardens, and we become more of a target actually when our heart is hard. We either feel like people are either afraid of us, or they see us as something that they can bang up against. And when the heart is open, it's like there's nowhere for things to land. So there can be just a very conscious practice in meditation of, when you're alone, when you're not in that situation, you can bring to mind the situation you are in that moment in your meditation. So maybe you're at home in your room or something, and things are safe enough and it's okay. So you don't need to be afraid, you don't need to defend yourself, you don't need to be angry, there's nothing really happening. And then bring up in your mind that situation that made the heart close, that made you angry and upset, and see whether you can soften around it and open it. So I'm not encouraging you to dwell in it and cultivate lots of unwholesome thoughts, but bring it up enough that you know how that feels again, and see whether in that safe environment that you're in, whether you can soften your heart to that person, whether you can even hear them, what they were needing or what they were expressing, what was underneath what they were saying, and whether you can open your heart, soften your heart a little bit. And then without the scenario of the people and the situation, in meditation practice, developing the radiant metta practices is really, really powerful. All the Brahma Viharas in the radiant form, where you're not going through lists of people, but you're just literally bringing to mind something that will generate the quality of metta, or the quality of karuna, or the quality of mudita, or the quality of upekkha, and staying present with that quality. You can use the breath to strengthen that, or to stay connected with that, and just really develop a field of metta in your own being. So it's got nothing to do with stories or people. It's a quality that you develop in your heart and in your mind, and that changes you, and that also changes the way you manifest in the world, and that changes the way you relate. And it can change other people, but I wouldn't don't do it for that reason, because sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't. So that's what I would like to say. And it's and all of these things, they're practices, whether you're working with greed or with aversion or with confusion or with harm or with ill will, all of that stuff, they're practice. You have to practice, you have to work at it. And then at some point, it's just like climbing a mountain. You're going to climb, you're climbing, you're wondering if it's ever going to get anywhere. And then at some point, oh, great, I can enjoy the view, until you get to your next mountain. I hope that's helpful.
Could I just jump in, because we only have 5 minutes left, but there's somebody who has had their hand up for a while. So I was wondering, I know you have to go at 11:30. I was wondering if maybe we'd use the last 5 minutes to invite one more question, and we can let you go and do our closing things after that.
Okay, thank you. That sounds good.
For 5 minutes.
Lovely. All right. Please.
Is that me?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. So more of a reflection than a question, but that poem by Tisa is just so wonderful and so beautiful. I've heard it a couple of times now, and the first time I heard it, just like, such an amazing experience hearing it, and it always makes me think back to my very first retreat experience a number of years ago. That heading into that first retreat experience, having so much anxiety and being so scared, because my perception was that it was going to be just like a dungeon, maybe a dungeon just with fewer distractions in it, and that's even worse. It's going to be stuck in this cell that is my mind, and I have to just like grit my teeth and white knuckle my way through these 7 days or whatever it was, which is not necessarily 100% inaccurate, but it took me a few days on retreat before realizing, like, oh no, there's a way out. I don't have to be here in this dungeon. I have the key. I can step out. And such an amazing insight. And yet that still comes up, you know, especially heading into retreats, subsequent retreats since then, that sometimes I'll still get scared of like, oh, what if this time it is just a dungeon 100% of the time? What if there is no way out this time? And the talk today, you know, hearing the poem again and hearing the reflection today was such a great reminder, you know, that there is always this way out of the dungeon, even outside of retreat experience, that there's always this way out. So thank you very much.
Good. Yes, so important. Yeah. Thank you.
And I'm aware that Aya Ananda Bodhi will be having her lunch fairly soon. But I just want to really thank you on behalf of everybody here for a really wonderful and inspiring and very practical, very relevant and helpful session. I think, you know, always hearing from other people's experience can really bring the teachings to life. And for me too, it was quite edifying to know that, you know, we all have this happening. This is just part and parcel of being a human being. And the difference with being on the path is that we're aware of what's going on. So that was really helpful. And also this classic phrase, isn't it, all throughout the suttas of Mara, I know you. You know, and as soon as Mara is seen, Mara, they say, like shoulders hunched, slinks away. Oh, the bhikkhuni knows me, the bhikkhuni knows me. So that applies to all of us. It's just seeing these things sometimes can be enough. So thank you so much. I would like to offer that you can leave now if you wish. I know that you have to, I want you to eat well and offer that kindness to your belly as you have to us. So thank you so much. And yeah, and we'll just finish up with 5 minutes. I'll invite Mel to say a few words. So thank you very much.
Lovely to be with you all. Yeah. Take good care. And thank you for supporting Aya Chanda in her beautiful work. Yeah. All right. Bye-bye.
That wraps up today's broadcast. If you have any questions or concerns, please contact us at info@buddhadharmatv.com. We work so hard to share the noble, peaceful, and sublime teaching of Buddha with you, helping you pursue the spiritual path under his wisdom. Thank you for watching. We believe our program on Buddha Dharma TV will inspire peace lovers around the globe. I am Nidarsha Purituakpu. Good night. Namo Buddhaya.